Welcome to the Guardian Group podcast series. The Guardian Group, providing extraordinary solutions to today's exceptional problems.
Hello, podcast fans. Welcome to another episode of the Guardian podcast series. It's been a couple of minutes since we've done the last one. I'm joined today by my colleague Rick Meraw in beautiful Toronto, Canada. Good afternoon, Rick.
Good afternoon, Todd. It's always wonderful sitting here talking to you, especially when the sun is shining and it's a nice day, even when it's wintertime.
I know. Actually, I'm broadcasting today from cold northwest Oregon, where it actually snowed this morning, which is really strange for this time of year. But anyway, welcome, and we're going to talk about outsourcing today. Why or who should outsource and some of the benefits of outsourcing. And the first thing that I want to bring up is, what is outsourcing? Well, when you're doing your day-to-day activities and you find yourself needing some help, whether it's painting or maybe anodizing or coating, maybe you're in the PCB world like us and you have too much work in the place and you need to have some help on the outside, that's called outsourcing. And the examples I show here are painting and anodizing, third-party inspection, assembly operations, and, of course, since we're in electrical test, we do that too.
So, Todd, a lot of companies right now, the larger ones anyways, are even outsourcing purchasing. What makes that one a little bit interesting is that you can pool your resources, right? So if you qualify your suppliers, make sure they're qualified, make sure they're meeting the requirements, the specifications, and etc. And if you pool that all in with a whole bunch of people or factories in that area, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when I think about it, now you mentioned, outsourcing, the purchasing or invoicing or that type of thing. I mean, really, when you think about it, you could pretty much outsource anything nowadays, since everything is either in the cloud or online. A lot of things can be done. And so I definitely understand that, with employee and labor and all that, sometimes, it makes a lot of sense, to send this stuff outside. So who should? I mean, outsourcing, if you do decide that you're overwhelmed or maybe it's an option for you, decision to outsource, relies on a great many factors. There's pros and cons on all of them. But I mean, right now, if you're deciding whether or not I should outsource, I mean, think about a few possible ideas is, what's my internal capacity? Do I have enough capacity to keep doing what I'm doing or taking on the extra load with what I have, my abilities inside? One thing that you'll hear a buzzword in the industry is sprint capacity. I mean, you have equipment and resources or office equipment and resources to handle what's been historically your daily operations. But what if all of a sudden you get a brand new customer and they're fairly large, and all of a sudden you find yourself a little bit overwhelmed? Did you design into your business plan the ability to sprint, which means being able to run at 110% of capacity or 115% of capacity? The other thing is, when you're thinking about outsourcing, what is your knowledge base for some of the projects that you might be taking on, or like Rick mentioned, something, in the finance category, sometimes it's accounting and such. How much is your knowledge base of your employee group or your management staff? Are you guys, do you have all the smarts to handle it? And if not, one of the things is maybe looking for somebody else to take on that for you. So, Rick, between you and I, there's pros and cons to both, but I think the strongest candidates to consider outsourcing are small to medium operations. Would you agree with that?
I agree with your first comment. Yes, anybody can outsource, right? I mentioned about even purchasing at the beginning of the talk of ours. But yeah, we kind of focus on the medium to small operations. Um, Anybody can go out and buy a machine, but it's just a machine. Maybe it's an automatic machine these days. But a machine's only as good as the know-how that you know how to process it. And I know at Guardian, our machines are our revenue base, right? We don't manufacture anything, so it's service based. So we have everybody focused and trained on providing a high quality service in meeting on time delivery. And
Right.
and you can see, Todd, when even our bell curves, when our work in progress is in going on, the beginning of the month, even the beginning of some weeks, we're a little bit light on work. But when you get towards the end of the week or the end of the month, our processing time goes way up. And it's
Right.
a mixture of small, medium shops, even large shops, sending us work so they can meet their on-time delivery as well.
Right. Absolutely. Definitely end of weeks, end of months. I mean, right now we just spun over to March 1st, and uh, the sprint capacity that I mentioned would be in play probably in the last week or so of February. But when you're talking about outsourcing, maybe you don't have all the capital available to go and buy that new machine. Capital equipment is expensive. Um, Maybe you have a smaller workforce, and a lot of them are more trained or knowledgeable in the tasks that you do every day. Um, and if you wanted to increase the production level, but you don't really have the ability to take on the labor costs and liability, that's one of the things when we talk about outsourcing, because when you outsource, you don't have to worry about the capital. The knowledge base is stronger when you outsource. Saying you were an electrical test outfit or a PCB outfit and you needed help with electrical test, partnering with Guardian is a logical solution because that's all we do. We test and we do it well, and our knowledge base is very strong in that area. You wouldn't have any maintenance costs if you outsource because we're running it on our equipment, or you would be running it on equipment other than in-house. We're taking care of the labor, and the liability is ours. So if we're testing product, we're guaranteeing the product is good when it comes back to you. And should there any unfortunate anomaly exists, the buck stops with us because we're the ones that took care of that for you.
That's
So
correct, Todd. That's correct, Todd. So I just want to reiterate a little bit there. Um, the first point you put out less capital, right? So when you outsource, and maybe this is why some of the reasons why we focus on small to medium rather than large our operations. But when you're small or medium, you don't have the resources. You don't have the knowledge base, right? So if you can pool that knowledge base in one central area and it's convenient for the manufacturers, then by all sense, it does make sense to outsource because that third party company can invest in that equipment that you need, can invest in the knowledge that is required, and can work through the complicated higher end projects or testing that is required these days. Many of the boards are not just bare continuity and resistance anymore. Many of them have expanded. Like many of the designs are calling for faster boards, right? Smaller devices. And they're also coming up with, they want high pod. So dielectric tests, insulation resistance. I could go on and on. High voltage, embedded component. You know them all, Todd.
oh yeah, and that's a great point because if you were deciding to try to do this yourself, you're going to be investing in equipment. that needs to be, newer equipment that's available to process these types of things. And when you use an outsourcing like Guardian, and we have all of these options available already, and you don't have to invest the capital, and the headache is ours. So that's great points because, like you said, PCBs are advancing quickly once again with all of the buried technology and high-speed substrates, HDI. If you have older equipment, testing some of this HDI product or these small traces and some of the even the older probers aren't a good candidate for this, much less the older fixture testers. So, again, outsourcing like the knowledge base and the capital would be on the outsourcing group rather than yourself. So when we talk about larger operations, Rick, I mean, of course, larger operations are open to outsourcing, but some are less likely to or more hesitant, aren't they?
Yeah, 100% correct. So, but they have more resources. They have more everything in house, right? So they have more people, more equipment, and they have more capital for reinvestment in the newer state of the art equipment in this field. But the smaller ones can do the same too. I've also saw some smaller facilities or medium-sized facilities that think or been told that they need to buy a new piece of a machine that's automated. They can do everything for them. So they take delivery of these machines and they sit and they sit and they sit as they try to qualify them, as they try to learn on them. And years go by or months go by and it's still sitting there. In the meantime, you may have throughput issues. You may have on-time delivery issues, all caused by this one little decision where a sales guy pushed you to buy a piece of equipment. Outsourcing, yes, whoever does the outsourcing is going to make a couple percentages of profit. That's just how business works. Just like a board shop makes a couple percentage points of profit. Even the equipment manufacturers make a couple percentage points of profit. But it goes in all directions, Todd. Let's call it that way. Large shops have more resources, more capital budgets, and more experience or can hire experience on what is needed to maintain that process and to get the process up and running in a timely manner.
I agree. And I know some mindsets in some larger corporations, they like to have everything in house so they can control all the variables. But, the argument in the past is, well, if we send it out, we don't have control, it'll be late and on time. And, when you have a good outsourcing partner like us, we guarantee our turnaround times. And we internally strive to do that as well as providing that to the customer. We have internal key performance indicators that we run to make sure that our systems are smooth and gives us an indicator as a service bureau or a service group whether or not we can meet the demands that our customers need of us. So, that argument from some of the bigger corporations keeping everything because of the control, it had some validity. It doesn't have as much validity now because very good outsourcing partners run a very strong business, a very tight ship, if you will. I think you would probably agree with that, Rick.
Yes, of course, Todd.
So if you decide to do outsourcing, what kind of deliverables and benefits would you get? So now that you've decided to do that, well, we talked about item one, Rick. You don't have your capital investment anymore. The partner is going to assume that they're the ones that are going to keep the technology ahead of the curve and the equipment and labor resource. Like I say, that you don't have in your operation, there's no extra labor or less labor required because the partner's taking care of that. And then the big one is the knowledge, the expertise. Your partner knows the process fully. And this is the probably one of the biggest points when you're deciding, to outsource is, am I knowledgeable enough to really do this, or am I really good at doing what I do? Maybe adding that extra piece to our puzzle is going to be more of a bottleneck than it is anything else. And so sending that out for the knowledge base, it is a big one. And Rick mentioned also that your outsourcing partner is going to know all the requirements and specifications and be able to guarantee that your product is being taken care of. So, Ricky, there's also that liability shift, right? When you outsource, you're not taking the liability yourself anymore because your partner's guaranteeing that product, right?
That's correct, Todd. So the liability is, there's challenges with liability, right? In principle, it's manufacturing. There's chemicals. There's a lot of things that go on into manufacturing a board. It's not like a bolt where you have a couple processes and you're done. There's many, many, many steps in building a circuit board. Maybe down as low as 20. I don't know, a double-sided, maybe 20-ish. If you really cut corners or really do it quickly, up until hundreds of steps in order to process a PCB board. If they have sequential lamb, back drilling, and etc., it's just very complex. So in any of those places, a lot of the board shops or all the board shops have their processes in line, but things happen, right? So liability does come into play. I know at Guardian, as you know, Todd, will take the liability for our mistakes, but we strive on having. We train our people for a service industry. We keep our machines maintained well. We keep them running. We have to ensure that the product is moving in a timely manner and that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Correct. I mean, I understand, the liability, like Rick said, the liability falls on us. I mean, we guarantee our processes and what we do that we're not going to make a mistake, but there's always, variables out there. With manufacturing in a printed circuit, it's complex, and certain things can happen later in the product cycle life in the field that isn't able to be detected or is out of the scope of the electrical test and or manufacturing process. Very rare, but that's when sometimes discussions happen about liability. But by and large, the liability is going to follow the partner to guarantee that what they're doing for your product is going to be done correctly. The other thing is your sprint capacity, your capacity issues go away. Your partner's handling that plus sprint capacity. So, if you ramp up, then your partner is going to be able, in most cases, like with us, we have, if you're in one location or close to one of our locations and all of a sudden you have a huge new customer and a huge product push and you're way out of league on capacity, well, we have more than one site that we have that we can draw on. So if the local center can take most of it, we also have other centers that can step in because all of our centers do the same thing and do it really well. And then again, the other one, the big thing when you're buying equipment, of course, you have your warranty and all that, but you have maintenance, whether it's daily on some machines or weekly or monthly. I mean, you still have the cost, and machines, they're mechanical, so they're going to break at some point. And with printed circuits, the complexity of the machines that have to use and the tight little probes that we have to use, things happen. So, but then again, if you're outsourcing, you don't have that cost and you don't have to worry about it. Anything to add there?
You're 100% correct there, Todd. But even when you're thinking about the pros and cons both ways, whether you want to do in-house or you want to do outsourcing or you want to do a mix, like full outsourcing, or you want to do some jobs outsourced, it's evaluating the true cost of it. What is the true cost of outsourcing? What is my true cost of internal? I think if you sit down and really dig deep into what goes into the process and you understand the nuts and bolts of a process and what comes along during that process of what you're doing, I think you'll find out that if you, well, I know you will find out if you have a dedicated process that isn't going to be too much of a time delay, or it can do it in the same time frame at roughly the same price, or maybe a little bit on the shorter side, it makes more sense to outsource it. Now you need to sell it to your customers that, yeah, I have independent quality control. And that's a key buzzword, independent quality control. I think it makes the manufacturer more prestige in the circuit board manufacturing industry, because a lot of people, they manufacture and they try and they certify it. If there's something in the process that it's a little bit on the wavy side, they'll try and get a waiver and police it with some spec from IPC or something like that, just to ensure that it meets the specifications.
You
Which
know
is
that
correct.
that is that's a big one, people. That Rick brought up. That's one of the major points, because we know that we deal with a few of the bigger military contractors out there, and they're very happy to know that the PCB manufacturers that are using us are using a third-party quality assurance screening process. That's big, because, like Rick said, that's a good selling point for your operation. So
And
with that, go ahead, Rick.
and everybody who's thinking about doing outsourcing, or they're a manufacturer, and if they just go in, Todd, and they say, "Oh, it's cheaper for me to do it myself," it could be right. They could be wrong.
Well,
I know you and I, we always take a step back and evaluate the real cost or the real root cause of something. It may take a few minutes, but it's most likely worth your time.
yeah, that's a big point that you mentioned too. Just coming back around to that is, do you actually, if you were going to outsource, or I can do all my electrical tests myself. I don't need outsourcing. But then when asked by maybe your management staff or whatever, well, do you know what the cost of your operation is? I mean, what is the cost of quality? Do you know how much is in your labor? How much is in your environment? How much is in your maintenance? I mean, do you really know what it costs to run your operation? And that's what Rick was kind of pointing to. We've had conversations with a great many PCB manufacturers over the years where they say, we can do it ourselves and cheaper. And well, they find out when they actually sit down and evaluate exactly what they're doing and what the cost of it, it's not such a clear picture anymore. They might have over labor because of a knowledge base issue. They have too many people running too few machines, and that kind of thing. So that's a great point. Knowing how much it really costs you to do it yourself, and then look at that against an outsourcing partner. Well, with that, we've talked about outsourcing, kind of wraps it up. We talked about what outsourcing is and talked about doing it myself or sending it out to a partner, finding the right partner, and then we talked about some benefits, and then kind of strayed off the path and talked about some scenarios of finding your cost of doing it yourself versus outside, and the pros and cons of small to medium operations and larger operations. I mean, we at Guardian, we offer, both the on-demand solutions for people that need to outsource maybe on a temporary basis due to capacity issues. And we also offer our integrate type affair, where we actually, if you really decide that I just really don't want the headache of this anymore, we can come in and even in your own facility, take on the entire electrical test nightmare for you. Any closing comments from you, Rick?
Hey Todd, I think it's been a very interesting conversation we've had today. And yeah, there's benefits for outsourcing it, there's benefits for keeping it in-house. But keep in mind the industry is changing. Boards are getting faster, boards are getting smaller, new testing engineers are looking for more ways to qualify the boards as they're manufactured. And this isn't going to change. This is going to continue. Um, we, even ourselves at Guardian, we never did insulation resistance test up until a couple years ago. And more low resistance testing is coming along. They want to know how much copper is there. They want to know how, if it meets the requirement of their design. And what does an engineer want? They want to know if the board is going to function and it's going to stay functioning as it gets into the final product. Just take a step back, have a look, internal or sending it outside, outsourcing it. There's pros and cons to both. If you have a question, please feel free to reach out to Todd or I. Will answer any question you may have.
Yeah, we'd be glad to. We've done this in the past. We've done site surveys quite a few, many times to help you on that decision-making process. And I know Rick just mentioned about the complexity and requirements of these new boards with the newer ones, with the RF factors in there, where speed is of the essence, and inductance comes into play because that's part of wave propagation and all that. So it gets the design side of printed circuit boards is advancing again rather quickly because chip technology and new packages are starting to come out again, and of course we're getting smaller, and so that makes it a little bit more challenging for us in the ET world, but that's what we're here to do. But with that, like Rick said, if you do have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us at info@guardian.com. Swing by our website at www.guardian.com. We have a knowledge base of a lot of different things that we do, along with our equipment lines. And you can find, and even if you actually were looking for actual parts and pieces for PCB equipment that's available, we do have a one-stop shop for you there. Check the shopping cart. And if you're actually wanting to look at just having some work done, we do have a click the quote button, and you can fill in some information, send us some data. We can get right back to you and give you a test solution, whether it's on probers or maybe you need some hard fixturing. We're here to help. I'm sorry, I'm selling too much. Anyway, thanks for being with us. And again, stop by the website. And from Rick and myself, we thank you for joining in, and we'll see you on our next podcast.